Hoping that Kendra comes in here. I need to, oh wait, this is a different ID up here. I better send that. Okay, so wonder why that is. Down in my office, it's a different Zoom ID. So let me send this to her. I think I graded all of the ones, or I looked at, not graded, I gave you the points on all the intro videos that were done, and that were very helpful for me to know kind of, as far as I know, there's only really a couple of people in the online and here that have a pretty good background in HTML and CSS, and they're not in the classroom. I think there's a couple that that have done a lot with it. The rest of everybody, so all of this class, I will be starting as if you've never had anything. So those of you that know a little bit, if there's those in here or online that know some, we're going to start from the very beginning. And okay, let me give her, let me do this again. Manage. Nope. I got to go here and get this Zoom ID again because it's different up here. Copy URL. Oh, it looks like Kayla isn't here, and she's usually here. Say. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Marketing or not marketing?
Yeah, social media social media. Yeah.
It won't let me take test 2. Quiz 2.
Okay, I'll look at it after this class. We'll look at it. Okay.
Okay.
Oops. Okay, so you would have gotten this too. I just sent out to everybody the Zoom link, which you don't need to zoom in if you're in the classroom, but it was a different link than what one student had. So I wanted to get that sent out and make sure. Yeah, it's recording. Okay, so hopefully she can, if she doesn't get in, I'll Zoom next time for her. All right, so what I wanted to look at is, I know Shai came by my office because it wasn't very well explained here about this week 1 schedule at the end of it. And I did update this, but it's not a problem if you didn't get it done yet because it was linked to the discussion instead of this assignment that it's linked to now. But this first discussion was out of this book, and that was the one that I was going to have you that was assigned. And then I told you this wasn't clear here. I just typed this in today, that to read the Learning Web Design Getting Started Part 1, pages 1 through 52, which is the first 3 chapters. And that may sound like a lot, but the reason I had you do that is because that's basically what I'm going to go over tonight, and it's the terminology that you need to know about the web and the different jobs and things that are available in web design prior to us starting to really do a lot of coding. But there is a little bit of coding at the end of chapter 3 that we're going to try to get to tonight. I'm going to tell how much I can get to. But after you read that Getting Started, at the end of chapter 1 of the Getting Started, there's a little a little exercise 1-1, and that's what this link is, that assignment. And so before the due date, it's actually, I was going to have it due to last night, but it wasn't very well explained. So it's open until next Monday night. Okay, so that one will you'll have time to do that. So what it is, it's called Web Creation Roles because it talks about all of the different roles or jobs in web creation. And so, and it asks some questions about your goals and things. Okay, so you'll see it's not a coding thing or anything. So, and I'll look at it before class is over, we'll look at it. So the first thing we did was we just did the read me first in this particular book. And let me see if it's, there this book is. Let's see if I can find my bookshelf. Oh, there's Kenya. I knew I didn't have the right link I saw, so that's not it. I want to call this, there it is. Okay, so in this book last week, what I assigned was the read me first portion of it, and that's what that first discussion was about, and everybody answered that. I haven't graded all of those yet because I was looking at those intro videos. So this one started, let's see, is that one it? Right here. This was where that first discussion came from, is this part. And so after that, what's going to happen with this book, we're doing chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 7 for sure, and we may do some others in it, but it will I may not do a lot in class excuse me, with it in the beginning, but just before we get ready to actually design a website that we're going to work on, we'll go over some of the principles. But this is pretty easy reading, and there's a lot of good examples. And so I'll be giving your discussion post will come out of this book, since we only meet one night a week. Then, like the other class period, that's what we would be doing. So we're going to do discussions, and I may do some live Zoom recordings, and those that can attend, it's not going to be mandatory. It's just going to be one that is out there for those that want an extra class, okay, or need a little bit of help. I'll be there for questions. So that's kind of what we're going to do with this one, because this is really also going to be good for when we get websites that we want to look at and we want to determine their usability. And according to Steve Krug, what's going to be the user experience with that website? Are they going to have success using it? That's what he talks about in this read me first. He tells you on page 9 of this book. Let me go to there real quick before we get into one last thing before we begin. Okay, so what this one says, he says, one crucial thing really, my definition of usability, and this is what our discussion was about, his definition, but something that he tells you about is that it's really simple. And whenever you think of the things that he goes over in here, it's something that should be pretty common sense. But a lot of people don't think about it when they're designing their site. They're just trying to make it robust and be something nobody's ever seen before. And you want to be sure that what it is something that people are going to experience success in using it, whether it's a website, whether it's an app. And this one thing he says over on the previous, let me go to this page above if I can. Where's it at? Right here, where he talks about now with mobile. Where's it at? Right here. This is something that is really important now that he's added to this book, because most of the time we look at everything that we view on our phones. We very seldom are in front of a desktop unless it's to do schoolwork. But most of the time, 24/7, you got your phone there. And so he goes into one of the dilemmas when he faced updating this book was that it's always been about usable websites. And so even though the principles apply to the design of anything people have to interact with, its focus was clearly on web design. And all the examples were from websites. Until recently, that's what most people were working on. So now he did 3 things in this book. He included mobile examples wherever it made sense, added a new chapter about some mobile specific usability issues, and the most important one, added "and mobile" to the subtitle on the cover. Now, something that you might not realize as a graphic designer, whether you're doing websites, mobile apps, whatever you're designing, you may not be coding it, but like when you have any of y'all, I'm sure you all could vote in a ballot box. Have you ever looked at those ballots and wondered, man, I can't figure that out, how they've done that. That's not very usable. So as a designer, that's something that you have some input on. You want to look at every form that you fill out and say, hey, I could make this a little better, you know? And so these are things that you're learning in design, and that's what this book is all about. Don't make me have to think. Is, okay, when you're using something, is it pretty user friendly and easy to figure out how to use? That's what UX, and we talked a little bit about that, and we're going to here in this learning design book about UX jobs, because they are, if you're good at that, that is a very, it's a very, very good job to get into. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to the, let me see if I can get it up here, to the learning design one. So was there any questions then about that week 1 schedule? On what, there's only one assignment that I think most people weren't clear on, and we're going to look at it right now. So let's go here. Let me see if I can. I'm not using my iCloud this time because it doesn't like it in this class. It won't bring it up. So I'm going to see if I can. I put it on a network drive to see if I can get to it. Let's see. It's called. And one thing y'all can be doing while you're waiting for me, do you see in Canvas, there's in the course information on the main home page, there's a link to download a zipped file, which you won't probably need those tonight, but that's materials for this Learning Web Design book starting in chapter 4, which I'm going to assign for next week. So if you want to download them here, or you can wait and download them on your home computer, whichever way. But that is something that I'll look at too. That okay, maybe it's going to work. That would be great. All right. Sure is nice when something works, right? Let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to open this book up. And where did it go? Instead of doing the PowerPoint, I'm going to kind of go through the book a little bit more, where there's more detail in here. So this is what your book, and Brianna held one up, that it will look like. And it is a new edition of this book. If you get the 4th edition, it won't have as much new stuff in it that this author, Jennifer Robbins, has put in here. And like I told you in the beginning, this is the first semester that I've used this book. So I'm going to be, you know, she introduces things a little bit differently than the book that I used to use, but it was not, it had too much in it. And it didn't get to where you could really code fast enough. So in her book, it has a getting started section, and this is the part that we had an assignment out of, getting started in web design. And so in this chapter, it just is giving you an overview of what web design is about. And here is about that assignment, web creation rules. And you remember in the discussion, or I think it was in the intro video, I asked you all who had developed sites using WordPress or Squarespace or Wix or Site Builder or Weebly. And several of you, because you took digital marketing last semester, have developed a WordPress site. And when I used to teach social media marketing before I used to Kent, that's what I always had students do, was use WordPress to create a template-based site. So if you do use one of those, somebody had used Wix. Was that you, Lainey, that had used Wix before?
Yeah, I used Wix and it didn't click in my brain for some reason.
Well, some of them are a whole lot different than others. WordPress is what industry is using a lot now. Yeah, even coders are using WordPress, and they're developing their own templates. And if you get to where you understand what's called PHP scripting and can really design templates, there's a lot of work in that area too. We don't get into PHP in this class, but once you learn some of the basics, you know, there are so many online tutorials out there. If you're motivated to learn that way, you can learn anything you want. W3schools.com has, I'll refer to that several times during the semester because it has HTML, JavaScript, CSS, everything is out there, Python, all of the things that you, and W3 is the standard consortium that the web operates under. It's a group, and this Jennifer Robbins is a part of that consortium. So here is the part that is that last assignment on that one for week 1. It says it takes a village, website creation roles. And so in this section, it talks about all the different roles that it takes to build a really good website. You can be what's called a content wrangler, somebody that is responsible for the content. And these are some of the strategists, what they do for content. But WordPress is really called a CMS, which stands for, anybody know the acronym CMS, what it means? Content Management System. And that's really what WordPress is known as. And so is Weebly and Wix and all of those, because that's what they do, is they manage a lot of content, where like WordPress was originally written to be a blog platform. And now people build their entire websites by having the home page a static page instead of a blog page. So a blog is a lot of content, right? Who knows of another blog program? Who knows another one that y'all use, young people use? What was that one, Tumblr? Did anybody ever use Tumblr?
Tumblr, oh God.
So that was a kind of a blog. And there's some others. There's a, yeah, Shy?
I use Wikipedia.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. Yeah, when I was young, we used the encyclopedia. That was now there's no such thing. World Book, anybody ever seen a World Book encyclopedia? I figured you did. You've seen them. They're huge, aren't they? Big old volume set. They're still, and they have a lot of transparencies in them where you could study the skeleton and all that stuff. We thought that was pretty cool. Okay, so there's all manners of design. Here's what I was talking about that's called UX designers, which is the acronym for user experience. Then there's interaction design and user interface design. So all three of those are comprised of different skills. Here it tells you the user experience designer takes a holistic view of the design process, ensuring the entire experience with the site is favorable. UX design is based on a solid understanding of users and their needs based on observations and interviews. According to Donald Norman, who coined the term, UX design includes all aspects of the user's interaction with the product, how it is perceived, learned, and used. For a website or application, that includes the visual design, the user interface. What's the user interface? What do I mean by that? If you're on an app on your phone, what's the user interface? How it's
the place you go.
Yeah, it's the buttons you push. It's how you get to the menu. That's how you interact as a user with that app. And so user experience is going to encompass all of that. And so if you go out like to Indeed or Monster, one of those, and look up jobs as a UX designer, look and see what that is and what kind of money they make. Because there's a handful of those compared to the billions of websites and apps that there are. So we don't have near enough of those. But some people, that's not their niche. They don't see the overview of all of it. Like, I liked code when I was a programmer. I loved that. My dad was an analyst, and he loved seeing the whole overview and being able to go into a corporation and tell them where they could make more money, how they could be more efficient. And that is a different kind of a mindset. So here, the following are deliverables that UX, UI, or interaction designers produce. So what does it mean by a deliverable? What's the word deliverable mean? Give it to somebody, right? So if you want to be one of those as your role, here's what you would have to be able to do. User research and testing reports, understanding the needs, desires, and limitations of users is central to the success of the design of the site or web application. Oops. So this is what you can read through this yourself. I'm not going to read it, the rest of it in class, but that's one job or role that a web creation person would do. Here's a wireframe diagram of a website, and this is something that we will do when we get ready to build our websites. Here's storyboards. How many's already taken the storyboarding class? Anybody take that? What's your name? Mario. Okay, anybody else taking the storyboarding?
I already did.
I thought you did. So you had to draw cartoons, right? You probably really liked that.
Well, yeah.
Kind of? Okay. So storyboarding is where you lay out what's going to happen in the app or the website. So you can also use flowcharts to do that, which we learned in fundamentals. That's one of the things you do. But here's, says the Twitter of TeamSpace's Team Up, share a file. So here's a storyboard that they designed for something. Now, these are some other resources, and I went to a conference back in like 2006 where I met this Jesse James Garrett. He's the one who wrote one of the first books on user-centered design. And it's not a very thick book either. It's kind of like this one, real thin book. The Elements of User Experience. So if that's something you're interested in, then you might want to look up some of these books. You probably can get them pretty inexpensively. Okay, visual graphic design, that's another portion of design. There are many methods and deliverables that can be used to present a visual design to clients and stakeholders. Mock-ups used to be the only way we could do website prototypes was like with Photoshop or something. And what did we use in Intro to Multimedia to create a prototype? Shai, you had that already, right? Who else had Intro to Mult? Somebody's taking it now. Okay. So what did we use in there? What Adobe product to create a mock-up? We didn't until last semester, I think. XD, Adobe XD. And so that the reason we got introduced to that in Intro to Malt is because you'll see in here it talks about Adobe XD is a really good tool to use to create a mock-up of a website, because you don't have to code it to see how the website's going to flow in Adobe XD. You can actually create menus with drag and drop, buttons, different things. Shy created an app. Did you create, I don't remember what everybody did, but I think I only did it last semester. Okay, so these are some of the different styling that's done. Do designers need to learn to code? That used to be, man, my graphics people, when I had the class and I didn't call it web design, because when we started this degree was in 1996. HTML01 was what was out there. We're at HTML5, right? So back then, coding was even a little more difficult because we didn't have editors like Dreamweaver and ones that give you where your errors are. But I have always notoriously had graphic designers that's like, I just want to draw, I don't want to code. Well, if you want a job, you got to do both a little bit, because you got to at least be able to talk to the coders to let them know what you need coded. And so like Adobe XD is really good for those that don't like to become coders, because you can create a prototype of what you want and pass it on to a developer. That's what they're called, that's all they do. And so, but here it tells you, do designers need to learn to code? In short, yes. A basic familiarity with HTML and CSS is now a requirement of anybody joining a web design team. And you might say, well, I don't want to do web design, I want to do graphic design. Well, you normally do not get to do one without the other unless you do freelance and you say for your little business, this is all I do. Logos, graphics, Photoshop, that's all I want to do. And you might be able to make enough in that area. But the more skills you have, the more marketable you will become. And so that's something that it tells you here. So some designers also learn JavaScript. And guess what? We're going to have 2 chapters of JavaScript at the end. But you may not have to become a really good JavaScript coder, but what you will see is you can do so much more with knowing a little bit of script, because it's what makes websites what's called dynamic instead of static. And when we used to code websites in 1996, they were what was called static. You could not interact with them. They were just there informational for you to read. So code is becoming more central to the visual designer's workflow. Where once Photoshop was all you needed to mock up web page designs to send them to production, mock-ups fixed to a particular size fall short of describing a page that needs to flex to a wide range of screen sizes. For that reason, designers are building their own working prototypes as deliverables that communicate how the design will look and behave in users' hands. Because back in 1996, we only had one size of screen. 640 by 480 was what pixels, how many pixels were on the screen. And so that's all you had to code for. But now we have so many different sizes of screens, it's unbelievable. I mean, so you have to be able to code in a way that your code will adjust to whatever screen size that it's on. And, you know, used to, you didn't have to worry about scrolling up and down in a website class. You just had one desktop. So that's what we're having to deal with now. That's why it's important for all designers to also know some coding. Now, I talked about this a little bit the first night of how many different types of web design jobs there are. And if you go out to Indeed, you'll see there are front-end development, back-end development, and full-stack developers. Of course, the highest paid are full-stack developers because they know how to create the website from the first inception to connecting to databases, which is what the, excuse me, back end does. Oh, man, thank you. So this that we're going to be doing is actually, we're just going to do the front end development. And it's probably more than most graphic designers think they should have to do. But front end, being able to create the front end of a website, even before it connects to a database, is a very valuable tool. So development falls under two broad categories, front end and back end. Once again, these tasks may fall to specialists, but it is just as common for one person or team to handle both responsibilities. Now, when we build the site that we're going to build for this class, after the second part of the class, after spring breaks, when we're going to get into that, we're going to do just the front end development. Hopefully, I may have some people either online, or I may have some people in my capstone course that know database, because that is an elective in the multimedia digital design degree that you can opt to take, is database theory and design, which that's what the back-end developers do. They connect to, you know, when you input data into a form on a website, if the back end of it is that the database is retrieving that data as you type it into a form and storing it so that it can be generate reports, or it can do a lot of different things. So that's what the back end is. But we're going to be doing this part, authoring and markup, HTML. It's the process of preparing content for delivery on the web, or more specifically, marking up the content with HTML tags that describe its content and function. So HTML, just like in all IT, it's an acronym, stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's the authoring language used to create web page documents. It's not really a programming language. It's actually a text markup. So before there was Microsoft Word, there used to be a word processing program, the very first one, called WordStar. And when you wrote out a sentence and you wanted a letter bolded, if you said this, then you would come out here and you would put a B here, and where you wanted it to stop bolding, you would do like this. And that is how you had to do a word processing document. Well, now with Microsoft Word, you just click on the B, right? And it bolds it, whatever's highlighted. So with HTML, you have to tell it how you want everything done, everything coded in the text. Hypertext, what is hypertext? It does change color, it's a different color, but what happens when your mouse goes over it? Go ahead, Brittany. Yeah, you get the little hand, and what does that little hand do? Yeah, it sends you to a link, right? So hypertext is a link. That's what HTML is. That's how the internet got started. A guy named Tim Berners-Lee, which you'll read about in the history portion, I think it's the 3rd chapter, is the one who decided or said, hey, you know, this internet can be really robust if we make links, and so that people don't have to try to research where to go. If they click on that, it takes them directly to that link. So hypertext is links. So the current version, and the version documented in this book, is HTML 5.2. And if you look, if you're interested, in Appendix D of this book, it tells you from HTML to HTML5 the history, and list what makes HTML5 unique. But we are going to be coding in this class in HTML5. It says 0.2. I just always call it HTML5. HTML5 is not a programming language. It is a markup language, because that's what it does. It marks up the text. And you say, well, on the internet, there's images. Well, you use HTML to insert an image into the screen. And when the internet first was created, you had no images. You had no media at all. It was all text and hypertext. So, this means it is a system for identifying and describing the various components of a document, such as headings, paragraphs, and lists. The markup indicates the document's underlying structure. You can think of it as detailed, machine-readable outline. You don't need programming skills, only patience and common sense to write HTML. See, I told you can do it. Only common sense. You have common sense? Yeah. My dad always told me I had no common sense because I was too logical and I couldn't think of the things that you should know how to do, like operate a printer. I always have trouble with printers. I hate printers. So there's a lot of things that those of you that maybe had trouble in fundamentals, who else taken fundamentals of programming so far? You took it? Okay, you took it, Kayla and Zachary. Okay, so this is a little easier because it's just marking up text. It's not a real programming language. CSS is what gives it its style, but we're going to learn just straight HTML first. And so all you have to learn to do is headers, paragraphs. Yes, Kayla.
There's a website. I did HTML and CSS in high school.
I saw
a website we used, and I just looked it up. They got rid of that website. The
Really?
website was called HTML is Easy, all one word, and it would literally show you step by step, like how to put in pictures, how to do the bold stuff, all that. And I tried to find it, and
There's
the site is not there anymore. So
there's a lot of them now. Probably they didn't want to update it to the most current version.
Yeah,
but
we used it, and I loved it.
Well, there's the one that I use a lot too is called w3schools.com. Yeah, and it does step by step too. And then there's another one, Solo Learn. There's a lot of them. But this book also takes you step by step through. So we're going to learn what's really important before you make your code look graphically pleasing to graphic designers, like a color and a fancy font or anything like that, is we need to learn straight HTML structure, which means if a line is a heading, then it's coded a certain way. If it's a title, if it's just a paragraph, then it's coded. There's tags to show that it's a paragraph. So all we're going to do first is we're going to take a block of text and we're going to structure it. Do you remember when you used to have to write a research report in high school and you had to write an outline? That's what it's talking about. It's like an outline. You have list items, just like in a word processor where you go up there and you pick if you want an unnumbered list or a numbered list or unordered, and ordered is what that's actually called. Then CSS is part 2 of the book, which HTML is part 2. CSS is the presentation of that HTML. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And so it looks like styles laid up on top of each other, and the last sheet of styles is going to take precedence over the first one that you apply. And you'll see what I mean as we get to it. Fonts, colors, background images, line spacing, page layout, and so on are all controlled with CSS. And see, when I first started coding in '96, there was no such thing as CSS. So if you wanted a different font, you had a tag for that. Now we don't use tags in HTML for fonts. We wait until we get to the style. We set up a certain style for paragraphs. So the first thing we're going to do is structured HTML code. Okay, so then the last thing in the book will be JavaScript and DOM scripting, and we're not going to even talk about that right now. But here goes ahead and tells you what back-end development is. I want you to read all of this. I'm not going to go in detail because I want to get kind of an overview here. I've only got 25 minutes left. So here's all the other roles that you can read about that you will use when you answer. Most of you probably want to be a multimedia producer. You get to just do the sound, video, animation, and interactive games. So that's one skill. So soft skills that every web designer needs. Here's something that you need: excellent communication skills, flexibility, critical thinking and good judgment, and a good attitude. And be sure that you know how to use spell checkers and get somebody to look over your grammar, because it's terrible when you look at a website and they didn't spell things correctly. And those are, yeah, and they use little i's instead of capital I's.
Oh, gosh.
So you have to be sure that you get somebody to help you if you're not good at that. Gearing up for web design. So here's what if you really want to do good, you know, have the everything that you would like to have when you do web design would be to have a big monitor, but some of us don't have that. But I do in my office, but I won't have it very long. Okay, so you can do all of this class on a Mac or a PC, and that's why I want you to, if at all possible, when you're in class, if you don't own a Mac, use these Macs so you can get an idea of what it's like to use a Mac. You can also run Windows on your own Mac if you have a Mac. But mobile devices for testing, a scanner and or a camera. We all have cameras because we have our phones, right? Web production software. Here's some of the, now here's what you can use to run Windows on a Mac. And VMware is actually free at Rose. You can download it. Okay, here's some of the coding tools. These are editors. Now, if you have your Creative Cloud license, you have Dreamweaver. And probably most of the time when I do examples in class, I'll use Dreamweaver as my editor. I won't use the drag and drop features of it, but I will use the editor, which this is an example of it right here because it's all color coded. And so I can show things better. And it also, what it does, it cheats for you. When you put a tag at the beginning, it automatically puts your ending tag in there so you don't forget it, because every tag has an opening and a closing like that. So these are other ones that are free that you can use. What was the one on the Mac that I told you that just comes loaded on? What can you use for typing in HTML? Right, text edit. It comes on the Mac and it shows you in, I think chapter 4 in the beginning, or maybe in chapter 3, how to set up text edit for coding. And what do you use in Windows? You know? You don't know? Who uses Windows? You do, Shy, because you got it open right there. Okay, so what? Yeah, and I'm gonna make you use that Mac right there this class. Okay, so what do you use in Windows for a text editor that's free? Come, it's not Word. Come on, some of you guys know you just won't speak it out. Okay, Notepad. That's what you use, Notepad. Because you can't use Microsoft Word because it puts little characters in there that you don't know about for spaces. But also, here are some that you can download. I used Brackets last year. We used it a lot in class. It's an Adobe free product. Microsoft Visual Studio is actually for the Windows machine too. Oh, this is not Dreamweaver. This is using Sublime Text, it says.
I was about to say, that kind of looks like Python or something.
Yeah, it wasn't that one. And here are the user interface layout tools. And remember, I told you it would tell us about Adobe XD. Here are some others that you can use. The Sketch app. Sometimes you can lay out how you want a website, especially the home page, to look. In like the Sketch. Mac only is the only one that has that. And the Sketch app is on your phone too. Like if you're sitting somewhere and you're having dinner or you're at the coffee shop and you think you get this idea of what you want something to look like, you can pull it out and you can do it right on your phone. So there's so much the Creative Cloud gives you as designers. So web graphic creation tools, that's the Creative Cloud. That is Photoshop right there. There's some others that are free. GIMP is a free open source. And I know one of my guys that's in Capstone, he graduates this year. He used GIMP because he couldn't afford Photoshop and Creative Cloud, and he can do anything with that. But it's a lot more difficult to use than Photoshop. But there's others here that some of them are open source, like that one that's free. So if you don't want to have Photoshop.
There's also
There's some other open source. Is that what you're saying?
they're not necessarily open source, but it's like it's not like Photoshop where it's a one-time payment and that's it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Photoshop, you can get some of the older ones that's just one time, but then as it updates, you don't get the updates.
Right.
Okay, and here's all the variety of browsers, and we have everything except the Internet Explorer and Microsoft Edge loaded here. And the reason that's important is because once we build a website, we need to open it in ones like Chrome and Firefox and Safari so that we can make sure that our website looks the same, because different browsers render websites a little different. They interpret certain tags differently. Mostly it's the CSS that's different. And there's another website by Jeffrey Zellman that lets you see really what different websites are going to do with certain tags. And there's things called hacks to make them display, like especially Internet Explorer, it's notorious for not displaying things the same way that the other browsers do. Because it's Microsoft, they think they can do whatever they want. So here are some the file management transfer tools. FileZilla is the one that I've used forever, and that's when you build a website and you build it on your computer, you have to have a way to get it to a web server for everyone else to see. So has anybody in here ever hosted a website? Put a site on a host? Anybody ever bought a domain name? Okay, so these are things that you probably talked about in digital marketing if you did WordPress, because WordPress gives you the option to do that, but it costs monthly to host a site. And so the domain names are like rose.edu. That's a domain name. And so most businesses are .coms, right? Then ones that originally, which is not like this anymore, but originally .org was for nonprofit organizations. But now they're kind of anybody uses anything. There's ones called .name, .biz. There's so many now. Yeah, .net is going to be, it's a lot of them. Okay, so this is where that assignment is called taking stock. And if you don't have your book by next Monday, let me know and we'll try to, at least if you're going to get the book, then we'll be able to help you out some. But then at the end of every chapter, I'm not going to, so far, I'll tell you if I change, but I won't require that you do these and turn them in. But when I give like the midterm, it will come from these test yourself questions at the end of every chapter in this book, okay? So be sure that you can answer these. And if you go back and look at it and you have any questions, let me know. Okay, 6:34. I don't know if I'm going to get to chapter 3. I wanted to. Okay, so I'm not going to go over, I think it's chapter 2 that I think you can read and understand a lot of it, because this is still more terminology. And oh, now this is important, the URL. What is a URL? Stands for Uniform Resource Locator, but it's the acronym for a web page address. Okay, so that's what URL stands for. is Uniform Resource Locator, and that's something that you need to know. And you need to know this, so I'm going to look at this. When you go, this is called the protocol, HTTP. Have you ever seen it where it said HTTPS?
Yeah.
You know what that means? Anybody know? That means it's secure. It can't be hacked, or it's very difficult to be hacked. And that's what Ken Dewey would tell you, Professor Dewey. Yes. So, but used to, it was just HTTP : this is an absolute address. This is the host name. www stands for World Wide Web. Yes, and you know, that isn't the whole internet. So World Wide Web is a subset of the internet, but that's the one that you're most familiar with. Then example is the domain name. The example.com is what you purchase. And so you can only purchase a domain name that is not already out there. Here is a path, in a directory path. So it's saying at this domain name on this host, in folder 2018, subfolder samples, there's a document called first.html. That's how you read that path. It's called the absolute path. And we'll talk more about that because you'll wonder why it's saying file not found. Well, it's probably hidden. Your file is probably hidden somewhere inside another folder and you didn't do the whole path. So here are simplified URLs. This one, every website, their home page is either called index.html or default.html, but most code it as index. So a home page is not called home.html. It's always called index.html. So when we create our first home page, that's what it's going to be called, is index. Because I don't know. It's always been that since I first started coding web pages, because it's the index of the whole site. And that's why they call it that. But here, here's one that we can go through. These are default files that are on this one site. Okay, this we're going to go through to anatomy of a web page. So if we wanted to see this actual page, we can go to this site. Let me see, in chapter 3 it tells us the web address. Oh, there it is, I think. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, so I'm going to go down and we're going to talk about this page. But this is what this source code looks like in the browser window. It's an HTML text document. It has a style sheet and it has 2 images. It has this image and this image. Tags in the HTML source document give the browser's instructions for how the text is structured. So every HTML document that you code is going to have a doc type, and this tells it that tells the browser what version of HTML. And when it says doc type HTML, it's HTML5. Then you have an opening HTML tag, and look at the bottom of the document, you have a cancel HTML tag. That's what that's called. And then you have every HTML page has a head section and a body section. And so everything that appears in the browser window is in the body. The head section doesn't show up. It's just linking to a style sheet. And this is the style sheet file, kitchen.css, and they have to be in the same folder. Okay, so here's where it is, that we're going to go look at it. So if you've got your browser open and you're in Chrome, here's what you do. You go to, let me make sure I've got a tab open. Yes, I do. So up here where it says View, everybody see that, even at the back? Okay, go to View, Developer, View Source, and click on it. And that's the source for the page that is right there, which is pretty complicated page, but we're not going to look at that one. Okay, so if we go to the one that I had open there, it says, with the browser of your choice, enter this URL into your browser. It's called Learn Web Design. I can actually click on it. So let me say allow. So there is that page. So in your address line, you could type in learningwebdesign.com, and then you do the /, which is the one under the question mark. That's all we're going to be using in HTML address lines, is the one under the question mark, not the /, which is under the bar up above the return. We don't want to use that one. So then you do /5e. So I know you guys back can't see that. So here's what you would type in right in your address line. You don't have to put www anymore. You used to, but you don't have to now. Learning Web Design / oops, I think it was .com, isn't it? Yeah, .com. Got the .com. .com / 5E for 5th edition / kitchen. So this one isn't index. This one is kitchen.html. Now, all file extensions, if you remember in Microsoft Word, there are only 3 characters, right? .exe, .doc, all of that. Well, you can actually name your file .html, but it's not the same as kitchen.html. Those are going to be 2 different files. So whatever file extension you decide to use it all the time. Don't switch back and forth when you name a file. Sometimes name it .htm and sometimes name it .html because they're different. So always use .html because it makes more sense, because that's what I'm coding in, is HTML, right? Okay, so did everybody get this up? Okay, so anybody need help? Everybody find it? Okay, so now go up to View and down to Developer and then View Source. Now that is the actual HTML that made that page come up. Now, you'll notice these 2 images, the name of them, if they were not in the same folder on the server, then they wouldn't show up. But it's saying header 1 tag, display the image, foods.png, and if you scroll over the image, it'll say food illustration, and then Jen's kitchen. So if I go back to what it looks like, if I go and click on that, or it should, and it's not. Oh, it only pulls that up if somebody has images turned off, like screen readers, people that have disabilities and can't see the images, but it can read to them. It will read what that alt said, and it'll say food illustration. Okay, so that's if you don't have an alt coded like that, where's that at? Right here, then you're not ADA compliant. Okay, so this part up here, it doesn't really matter, but let me show you something else that you can do here in Chrome. See where it says developer, and if you go over here and click developer tools, look what comes up over here at the right of your screen. It shows you where the body is. It shows you the DOM, what's called the DOM here. Shows you what color the display is blocked. This will make more sense to you whenever you know a little bit more HTML. But here's the CSS. This is CSS. That's the body there. You have something called event listeners. There's not any in that one. DOM breakpoints. This is a very simple web page. Properties, accessibility. But up here, is the actual elements. There's the HTML element, the head element. So tags are synonymous with elements. If you hear, okay, that's a HTML element, that's talking about this HTML tag. A head element's the same as a head tag. Okay, so there's HTML head, body, div, table, and body used in this one. I don't see a table tag. It doesn't use a table tag. I don't know why it says it does. Let me see here. I don't see a table at all. So that's not, I'm not sure why it says that. But when we do, if we were to open this up, okay, I could download this, save page as, I'm going to just go here to, oh, wait, I better open something. Spring20. Let me just make a, oh, this isn't on, where's it at? Let me go to documents because I don't want it on the cloud. Then it, oh, here we go. Oh, is that open? Where is? Oh, that's not where I wanted. Okay, I'm going to go just to the desktop then. Okay, here's the desktop. I'll make a new folder for web design class. And I'm going to save this one here in that. Okay, now that's my view source. Now I'm going to show it in Finder. And I'm going to open it with Dreamweaver. Let me see. I'm going to show you what it does. If it will open up. Taking Dreamweaver a while. So we're going to do some modifications to it. Oh, it sure is spinning. Oh, that looks like the old Dreamweaver, 2019. I think there's a newer version. He must have not loaded the new one here, which will give you problems sometimes. I wonder. Okay, quit bouncing. Let's go, let's go. First time you open it, it's like that, and then it should not take us long the next time. Come on, guys. There we go. Updating the site. Oh, I didn't want to update that site. Okay, so it's almost open. Let me see. Where did it put my file? It's open in here. Let me see if it's that one that's opening. No. Okay, I'm going to open. Oh, it won't let me. Upload. No. Always sync settings. Sync settings. Import sync settings. I don't care. Okay, so now let's see. Open. Now I'm going to go over to where I put that file in web design class here. And now I'm going to open it. But I did not download those images, so it's probably not going to give them to me. No, I don't want to see that. Okay, so this is not showing me. Let me go up here to view mode, live, toggle view mode. No, I don't like that either. Let me see if I can get Dreamweaver set up right. Come on. Split, cone design. I want to split vertically. I don't like it horizontal. And I like to switch it. View mode, toggle view mode. No, where'd it go? I always put split. Live view on left. No, I want it on the right. There, that's how I like to see it. Okay, this is not doing the live view, and I don't really know why. It should be showing me what the page looks like, and this should be the HTML side. So something's not right here. view. Let me see, design. That's the design mode. Why is it not? And all the windows, like properties, you can see the properties in Dreamweaver. If you haven't ever used it, you can go down here like this. But I don't know why it's doing that. It's not showing me. Must not be connected to the browser. I'll have to mess with it. I thought this was already set up. It is on my laptop. Okay, so anyway, you saw the source, you saw what it looks like. And so to view a page that is a little more complicated, you can look at the source for this web page. So if I look at this one, and then, and you don't have to do this, but then if I go up here and I do developer view page source, this page has a little more to it. But you can still see the list. Here's an unordered list. That's what that tag stands for. List, and you have to have a list item, an LI, for every one in the list. So if you go back here and look at it, you can see these are lists. See, they're bulleted here. So that's a list item. And that's what we were looking at in the HTML. Okay, I've only got 5 minutes left. So what I want to show you really quickly is in 3, I want you to go ahead and go through, be sure that you've read all 3 of these chapters. At the end of chapter 3, there's actually not a test questions at all. This has a lot of resources in here, but if you haven't read all 3 of those chapters in the Getting Started, that was part of week 1. But week 2, I'm going to have you actually start in part 2, the HTML for structure. And we're going to do some, let's get to it, creating a simple page. And so this one right here, a web page step-by-step, it's going to have you that file in Canvas. Let me go back over there. This one that I told you, the zip file to download, lwd5e materials.zip. This has the files that you need in order to do what it's wanting you to do in chapter 4. Those files, those zip files, start out with, you look at them and I will show you. Here's how, when you download that zip file, it'll start with chapter 4, and it even has the finished exercises. But here's what you start with, and those are only there so that if you get stuck, okay? But I'm not gonna, I'm gonna have an assignment where you upload yours exercise, okay? But we'll probably also, it won't be due till next Monday night. So if you need some help, I can help you with it. But this is called HTML the hard way, because this is going through and step by step it tells you how to build this page right here. You're going to have the image. You're going to launch a text editor. You can use Notepad if you're on Windows. You can use TextEdit if you're on the Mac. If you want to use Dreamweaver, you can use Dreamweaver. I don't care. But this shows you right in chapter 4 how to set up TextEdit and how to set up Notepad to create the text file that you need, okay? It shows you what you have to check in there. So you'll be able, if you follow this step by step, you shouldn't have any problems. In chapter 4, you'll do exercise 4.1 through, I think there's 4 or 5 exercises through that chapter, and it tells you step by step what to do. And so if you have any trouble with it, you can ask me on next Tuesday, because you know I don't close that assignment. I just would like for you to have attempted it before class, and then if you have questions with it, then we'll go over those. So I'll put the week 2 schedule out there by tomorrow, and maybe tonight, I don't know, it depends. And then you'll have until next Monday night to at least try those, okay? If you need some help, we'll go over it in class. But I want you to read through it and see what you can do with it. Okay? Anybody have any questions? We cover a whole lot in here. So with one class a night, you're going to have to work a lot outside. I mean, one class a week, you're going to have to work a lot outside of class, okay? All right. I'll see you guys next Tuesday night. See you later, Kenya.
Hi,
Any
Professor
questions?
Wilson.
You okay?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
You're okay. All right.